single mother faced rejection for bringing her child to the job interview until the billionaire executive appeared. "You brought a child to a business meeting." Sandra's voice sliced through the polished silence of Mitchell and Associates' lobby like ice against marble. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she crossed her arms, staring down at the young woman before her. "Yes," Sandra said with obvious irritation, placing her hand on her hip. Maya Rodriguez clutched a manila folder against her chest and struggled to keep her voice steady. "I had no other option. I couldn't leave her unattended." Her daughter, Sophia, stood beside her, 4 years old with dark curls framing her round face, small sneakers scuffing against the polished floor. She wore a little pink dress that Maya had carefully selected from a thrift store and hand-washed the previous evening. Her bright, curious eyes darted around the towering glass building, unaware of the tension filling the air. Sandra scoffed and glanced toward the receptionist. "We screen for professionalism here, not family reunions." "I understand your concern," Maya said quietly. "But I'm here now. I came prepared with everything you requested." "You clearly didn't prepare adequately," Sandra snapped. "This is a corporate interview, Ms. Rodriguez, not a childcare facility." Maya flinched at the harsh words, but remained firmly in place. Sophia looked up at her mother, her small hand finding Maya's fingers. Maya gave her a gentle squeeze, forcing a reassuring smile for her child, even as her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Sandra turned toward a nearby security officer. "Can we have someone escort?" A small gasp interrupted her sentence. Sophia had accidentally bumped into a paper cup sitting on the edge of the reception desk. The water spilled across the marble floor with a soft splash. Maya dropped to her knees immediately, pulling tissues from her bag and dabbing frantically at the water. "I'm so sorry. Please, she didn't mean to." No one moved to assist. No one spoke. Only the distant clicking of keyboards from the reception area filled the uncomfortable silence. Maya crouched there, cleaning the floor while her daughter watched anxiously. Her worn black flats were scuffed, her hands trembling slightly. The atmosphere around her felt heavy with judgment and disapproval. Then the elevator chimed softly. Out stepped a man in a charcoal gray suit, tall, composed, and unmistakably powerful. He moved like someone accustomed to being watched and respected. The receptionist straightened immediately in her chair. Even Sandra froze momentarily. Alexander Chen, CEO of Mitchell and Associates, a name that appeared regularly in business publications and fortune profiles. At 37, he had built a financial empire, but few company employees had ever encountered him personally. He wasn't supposed to be in the building that day. Yet there he stood, pausing mid-step, his brow furrowing slightly as he observed the scene unfolding before him. A woman kneeling on the floor, cleaning spilled water with a child standing nearby. A manager glaring disapprovingly. A room full of people pretending not to notice the uncomfortable situation. His voice was calm, deep, and unhurried. "Why don't you tell me what brings you here today, miss?" Maya looked up, startled by the unexpected intervention. "Rodriguez," she said. "Maya Rodriguez." He nodded and gestured toward the comfortable seating area. "Let's sit down and talk." Sandra blinked in surprise. "Sir, this candidate brought a child to the interview." "I can see that," Alexander replied smoothly. "I can also see that she arrived on time with her materials prepared. So let's hear what she has to say." Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. Sandra looked as though she had swallowed something bitter. Alexander didn't hesitate. He pulled out a chair for Maya and seated himself, elbows resting on his knees, positioning himself at eye level with her. Sophia, sensing the shift in energy, climbed quietly into her mother's lap and settled down calmly. "Take your time," Alexander said gently. "Start wherever feels comfortable." Maya swallowed the tight feeling in her throat. Her hands smoothed Sophia's dress absently as she reached for her resume folder. "I applied for the administrative assistant position. I saw it posted online and thought it might represent a fresh start for us." He nodded slowly. "Why now?" Maya glanced down at her daughter, then back at him. "Because I can't afford to wait any longer." For the first time that morning, the room held something other than judgment. It held anticipation, curiosity, and the beginning of something unexpected. Sandra hovered behind the seating area, arms folded tightly, lips pressed into a thin line. She remained silent, but her disapproval weighed heavily in the air. Alexander ignored her completely. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low but focused. "Let's start with your background, Ms. Rodriguez." Maya took a slow, steadying breath. Sophia sat quietly in her lap, gently playing with the corner of her mother's jacket. "I lost my husband 3 years ago," she said softly. "Military deployment overseas, an improvised explosive device." Alexander's expression didn't change, but his eyes showed genuine sympathy. "I'm very sorry for your loss." Maya gave a small nod, the kind people give when they've already shed all the tears they had to give. "I was 22. I had just started part-time classes in business administration. I thought it would help us build a better future. Then everything changed overnight." "Family support?" he asked quietly. "None nearby," she said. "My parents died when I was 17. My husband's family lives across the country, and we lost touch after the funeral. I've been raising Sophia on my own since then." Sophia looked up at the sound of her name. Maya gave her a soft kiss on the forehead and continued. "I've worked wherever I could find employment. Coffee shops, retail stores, evening cleaning crews. I applied to Mitchell & Associates because I heard you offer internal training programs. I thought if I could just get through the door." Alexander glanced down at the resume in his hands. It was simple and brief, but clean and honest. "And you're still pursuing your education?" She nodded. "Online courses, late nights after she's asleep." Alexander looked at Sophia. The little girl was now gently tapping her feet rhythmically, quiet and calm, as if she understood her mother needed the silence. He turned back to Maya. "And today, why bring her with you?" "I couldn't afford childcare this week. I lost our apartment last Wednesday. We're staying in a weekly motel while I search for something more stable. I didn't want to leave her there alone, even for an hour." She straightened her shoulders then, the slightest act of quiet defiance. "I know it appears unprofessional, but I also knew this was my opportunity. So we got dressed up, practiced interview questions together, and came here." Sandra finally interrupted from behind them. "We could always reschedule when you have proper childcare arrangements." But Alexander raised his hand, cutting her off smoothly. "She came here prepared and ready. We'll finish this conversation now." Sandra blinked in surprise. Alexander turned back to Maya. "Would you be interested in a 2-week trial position? Administrative support, entry level. You would report directly to my office." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She blinked once, uncertain she had heard correctly. "Yes," she said quickly. "Absolutely, yes. I'll have someone from Human Resources prepare the paperwork by end of business today." Maya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sophia let out a tiny cheer, not fully understanding the situation but clapping her hands enthusiastically. Sandra looked completely stunned. Alexander simply stood, adjusting his jacket. You can start Monday morning. There's a small on-site daycare center. We'll make sure Sophia is enrolled. He nodded politely. Welcome to Mitchell & Associates, Ms. Rodriguez. Maya rose to her feet, cradling Sophia in one arm while clutching her folder in the other. For a moment, she simply stood there, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. No pity had been exchanged between them, only mutual respect. As she turned to leave, Alexander looked down at Sophia and said quietly, "You did excellent today." Sophia smiled brightly and offered him a small sticker from her pocket, a wrinkled star-shaped one she had been saving. He accepted it without hesitation. In that moment, without fanfare or grand gestures, something significant shifted. This was no longer just a job interview. It was the beginning of something new and meaningful. Alexander Chen was a man of precise routines. His mornings began at 5:15 sharp. One espresso, 30-minute workout, emails reviewed by 6 a.m., car service waiting at 6:30, and by 7 house, he was in his glass-walled office overlooking the financial district, CEO of one of the fastest-growing investment firms on the West Coast. He possessed everything society expected a successful man to have by 37. A penthouse that resembled something from an architectural magazine, a wardrobe that changed seasonally, and articles written about him using words like innovative, transformative, and the next Warren Buffett. Yet at the end of every workday, he ate dinner alone. The apartment echoed when it rained. The silence felt too complete. He never discussed the accident, the one that had taken his younger brother when Alexander was 15. David had been 10 years old, bright-eyed, always building elaborate structures with toy blocks. Alexander had been driving that day, too fast, too reckless, showing off for friends. He'd never forgiven himself for the split-second decision that changed everything. Since then, emotional distance had become his protection. Work served as his shield. Feelings were compartmentalized and stored away like his perfectly organized files. But something shifted after Maya Rodriguez walked into his company. Sleeves slightly worn, child in one hand, and dignity in the other. She started the following Monday. She was obviously nervous but punctual and respectful. She asked intelligent questions, stayed late to complete her training modules, and never once used Sophia as an excuse, even when her daughter developed a fever midweek. Alexander observed from a respectful distance, not because his position required it, but because he found himself genuinely interested. One afternoon, he stepped out of a board meeting and paused at the end of the corridor. Through the glass break room door, he witnessed Maya sitting at a small table, her lunch tray untouched before her. Across from her sat Mr. Vasquez, one of the building maintenance workers. Older, quiet, typically avoided by the office staff. Maya was sliding half of her sandwich toward him. She had cut it perfectly in half. "I brought extra today," she said with a warm smile. She hadn't brought extra. She looked hungry herself, but she offered it anyway. Alexander said nothing, just observed quietly. Something tightened unexpectedly in his chest. The following day brought a different scene. He was leaving his office late when he overheard sharp, impatient voices down the hallway. "You can't keep leaving early, Maya. The rest of us end up covering your workload," a co-worker complained loudly. "This isn't a daycare center. I was 5 minutes late picking her up," Maya said quietly but firmly. "I stayed past closing yesterday to finish all my reports." That's not the point here. Alexander rounded the corner and saw her standing by her desk, shoulders drawn tight, lips pressed together. Her daughter wasn't present, but her influence, her responsibility, lingered in the criticism. Maya caught sight of him. She straightened immediately, not pleading for intervention, just preparing to endure whatever came next. Alexander looked at the complaining employee and said evenly, "You can leave now." The woman blinked in confusion. "But I understand. You can go." When they were alone, Alexander stepped closer. "Are you all right?" Maya hesitated. "Yes, sir." He studied her for a long moment, then said, "Take tomorrow off." She blinked in surprise. "I didn't mean to cause any—" "You didn't cause anything. You've earned the time." Her lips parted, but no words came. He didn't wait for gratitude, simply nodded and walked away. But as he rode the elevator down to the parking garage, his thoughts were louder than usual. He remembered the way Maya's eyes had darkened, not with defeat, but with quiet restraint. He remembered the sticker Sophia had given him the previous week. He hadn't removed it. It remained attached inside his daily planner. For the first time in years, Alexander felt something stir inside him, something warm and unfamiliar, like the first hint of spring pressing against a window still frosted from winter. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of spring day that made city residents believe summer had arrived early. Riverside Park buzzed with acoustic guitar music, distant laughter, and the steady rhythm of joggers on the paths. Alexander Chen didn't usually walk through public parks, too crowded, too unpredictable for his taste. But today, his driver had dropped him off early for a dinner meeting. He told himself he needed fresh air and exercise. The truth was more complicated to acknowledge. Near the fountain, something made him pause. A little girl in a purple hoodie and light-up sneakers was crouching beside a bench, trying to reach a plastic bottle caught in the bushes. Next to her stood a woman he recognized immediately. Maya knelt down, carefully extracted the bottle, and handed it to the child. "Okay, Sophia, where does this belong?" Sophia scanned the area systematically, spotted a recycling bin, and marched over like she'd been given an important official mission. She deposited the bottle inside, turned around, and beamed with pride. Alexander stopped beneath a large oak tree just out of their view. Sophia tugged on Maya's sleeve. "But Mama, why do we clean up when it's not our mess?" Maya brushed a fallen leaf from her daughter's curls and answered thoughtfully, "Because we don't wait for the world to become kind, sweetheart. We help make it kind ourselves." Alexander's chest tightened unexpectedly. He had built a successful company, established a reputation, accumulated wealth. But had he ever taught anyone something that profound and honest? He stepped out from the shade of the tree. "Looks like I've discovered the city's newest environmental team." Maya turned, genuinely surprised. Sophia's face lit up immediately. "Mr. Alexander." He gave a small, formal bow. "Miss Sophia." Maya smiled, warm but uncertain. She wore jeans, a faded jacket, and the breeze had brought color to her cheeks. "I didn't expect to encounter you here." "Neither did I," he said, "but I'm glad our paths crossed." A moment passed. "Have you two had lunch yet?" Sophia perked up enthusiastically. "Pizza?" Maya looked like she might politely decline. Alexander was already retrieving his phone. "There's a place nearby, wood-fired oven, outdoor seating under umbrellas." She glanced at Sophia, then back at him. His smile wasn't rehearsed or professional, just genuinely human. "All right," she said. "Let's go." They sat beneath a striped umbrella while Sophia colored on the children's menu, and Maya picked carefully at her salad. Alexander had removed his blazer and rolled up his sleeves. For once, he looked like someone who wasn't performing a role. "So," he said, "you're teaching her environmental ethics now." Maya laughed softly. "Only when trash is involved." "That answer you gave her," he shook his head admiringly, "that was genuinely beautiful." She shrugged modestly. I just want her to grow up understanding that kindness isn't something you wait to receive or have to earn." Alexander's voice softened. "Is that how you were raised?" "No," she said honestly. "I was raised to hope kindness might appear if you were fortunate." She dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "After my husband died, I thought grief would be the most difficult part. But it wasn't. Survival was. Waking up every day pretending I had everything under control when my entire life was packed in boxes." Alexander didn't interrupt or offer empty consolations. "I thought if I worked harder, smiled more, asked for less, everything would be okay. But life doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards perception and image." He leaned forward. "You're wrong about that." She raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" "The world might not always recognize authenticity, but I do. I value substance over appearance." Their eyes met across the small table. Sophia interrupted the moment, holding up a drawing proudly. "I made us a house." Alexander grinned. "It's a masterpiece." Later, they strolled through the park together. The sky had shifted, and a cool breeze rolled in from the water. Sophia sneezed softly. Maya reached into her bag for a sweater, but Alexander was already removing his jacket. He draped it around Sophia's shoulders before anyone could object. "You don't have to do that," Maya said gently. "I want to," he replied. "A good leader notices who's uncomfortable in silence." Maya stopped walking. Something in her chest pulled tight, then released. She looked at him. Not the CEO, not the man from magazine covers, but the person who had just made her daughter feel cared for and safe. For the first time, she didn't see wealth or corporate power. She saw presence, warmth, someone who noticed small details and stayed when it mattered most. Maybe, she thought quietly, maybe they weren't so different after all. The elevator ride to the Human Resources Department felt endless. Maya clutched a thin envelope with her name written in block letters on the front. Sandra had delivered the request that morning with no explanation, just 10 a.m., HR Conference Room C. Maya already understood what it meant. Inside the conference room, the blinds were drawn. Sandra sat rigidly at the table next to Mr. Patterson from Legal Affairs. A manila folder lay open before them. Maya didn't need to see the contents. She had already seen them online. Photographs of her and Alexander walking through Riverside Park. Sophia riding on his shoulders. Alexander draping his jacket over her daughter. The caption from the anonymous workplace gossip blog echoed in her mind. Single mom hits the jackpot, or just knows how to work the system. She had read the comments section. CEO's pet project. No wonder she got promoted so quickly. Typical manipulation tactics. Now she sat here being judged not for her work performance, but for something she had never initiated or encouraged. Sandra cleared her throat officiously. "Ms. Rodriguez, there have been concerns raised about your relationship with Mr. Chen." "I'm sure there have been," Maya said quietly. Patterson leaned forward. "This isn't about gossip or rumors. It's about perception, liability, and protecting the company's reputation." Sandra pushed the envelope forward. This is a voluntary resignation letter. No controversy, no negative references. Maya stared at the document. 6 weeks ago, she had been unemployed, sharing a motel room with her daughter. She hadn't flirted, hadn't manipulated anyone. She had simply done her work and accepted genuine kindness. Now that kindness was being used against her. She thought of Sophia, of all the late nights she had stayed to catch up on tasks, the mornings she had skipped breakfast so her daughter could eat properly. Her fingers touched the edge of the paper. "May I have a moment to consider this?" she asked. Sandra nodded curtly. "Of course, but the sooner we resolve this, the better for everyone involved." Just as Maya reached for the pen, the door opened. Everyone in the room turned. Alexander Chen walked in, no tie, sleeves rolled up, expression completely unreadable. "Mr. Chen, this is a private HR meeting," Sandra began. "Then make it transparent," he said firmly. He moved to Maya's side, facing Sandra and Patterson directly. "I've seen the blog posts," he said calmly. "The photographs, the speculation." He looked at Maya. "I approved her promotion based on merit, work ethic, and performance results." Patterson cleared his throat. "There are still concerns about professional optics." "Then let's be absolutely clear," Alexander said, his voice sharper now. "Questioning her integrity means questioning mine." Silence filled the room. He turned to Maya. "You don't need to sign that document. You've done nothing wrong." Maya looked at him, really looked. He wasn't here to rescue her or fix her problems. He was here to stand beside her, to believe in her character. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. He answered without hesitation. "Because you matter. Because the people who work hardest shouldn't be the ones left most vulnerable to rumors." Sandra exhaled heavily. "Alexander, the optics—" "Then change the perspective," he said. He picked up the envelope, tore it cleanly in two, and dropped it into the wastebasket. "You're dismissed from this meeting, Ms. Rodriguez. Not from this company." Maya blinked, overwhelmed by relief and gratitude. "Thank you." "You've earned your place here," Alexander said firmly. As they walked out together, murmurs rippled behind them, but Maya walked with her head held high. Not because Alexander had defended her, but because someone finally believed in who she truly was. They reached the elevator bank. She turned to him. "You know they'll gossip even more now." Alexander smiled. "Let them talk. I'm not afraid of noise." She held his gaze steadily. "Neither am I." The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside together, and something quietly began to shift between them. Maya avoided the executive floor for 3 days. She took early lunch breaks, left at exactly closing time, and stayed away from the glass elevators near Alexander's office. It wasn't about the gossip or rumors. It was about feeling exposed and vulnerable. It was about being defended publicly by someone who believed in her worth. The difficult part wasn't pity or sympathy. It was genuine belief and trust. That felt like a responsibility she wasn't certain she deserved. Late one evening, as she sat on the worn couch of her small apartment with Sophia asleep in her arms, her phone lit up with a new email. "You are more than what they say about you. You are exactly what this company needs. Don't disappear on me. Alexander." She read it 3 times. Then, without replying, she stared out the window at the city skyline and whispered, "Why does that make it more complicated?" 2 days later, she received a calendar invitation from his assistant. No title, just rooftop meeting, 6:15 p.m. Maya almost declined, But at 6:12, she found herself standing at the stairwell door, heart racing, hand on the handle. The rooftop was peaceful, the wind gentle but persistent. The city stretched out before her, indifferent and golden under the setting sun. Alexander stood near the edge, suit jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his silhouette outlined against the sky. He didn't turn when she stepped outside. "Thank you for coming," he said. Maya approached slowly, folding her arms across her chest. "You didn't have to defend me like that." Alexander glanced at her. "Actually, I did." Comfortable silence settled between them. Not awkward, just full of unspoken understanding. He finally spoke again. "When I was 15, my younger brother died in a car accident." Maya's breath caught. "He was 10 years old. I was driving that day, too fast, showing off for friends. Lost control on a wet road." She didn't speak, sensing he needed to continue. "David was supposed to be at home, but he begged to come with me. I said yes because I wanted to be the cool older brother." He swallowed hard. 3 minutes. That's how long it took for everything to change forever." Maya stepped closer. "You don't owe anyone redemption, Alexander." He looked away. "I know that intellectually, but it doesn't stop the need to try." His voice dropped lower. "When I saw you holding your daughter, standing there while everyone judged you, and still maintaining your dignity, I remembered what leadership was supposed to be about." He turned to face her fully. "You saved someone, not just your daughter, not just yourself." He stepped forward. "You reminded me why I started this company, why success has to mean something beyond profit." Maya's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She stepped closer too, slowly and carefully. Then, without needing another word, she reached out and took his hand. Warm, solid, steady. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. For the first time, both of them felt the quiet presence of something they hadn't known how to name. Not being alone anymore. The city hummed below them, but it felt distant. Up here, there were no job titles, no rumors, no mistakes too large to forgive. Just two people, both wounded, both brave enough to stay and try again. The rain fell steadily, soft but persistent, as Maya stared out the window of their tiny studio apartment. A bucket sat in the corner, collecting steady drops from the leaking ceiling. The electricity had gone out an hour ago. The air felt damp and cold. Sophia was curled beside her on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, whispering, "Mama, I'm cold." Maya pulled her daughter closer and kissed her forehead gently. She reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over one contact name, Alexander. For a moment she hesitated. Then she typed, "Power's out. Roof is leaking. Sophia's shivering. I'm sorry. I just didn't know who else to call." The reply came within 60 seconds. "I'm on my way. 15 minutes." Alexander's car pulled up in front of the building, just as Maya stepped outside, holding Sophia under a small umbrella. Rain had plastered her hair to her forehead. Sophia was wrapped in Maya's jacket, both arms around her mother's neck. Alexander jumped out, opened the passenger door, and took the umbrella without a word. He shielded them as he gently lifted Sophia into his arms. "You're both soaked," he said quietly. "I'm fine," Maya replied, her voice trembling, not from the cold. He didn't argue. His penthouse was warm and softly illuminated. Marble countertops, artwork on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the storm outside. Maya stood awkwardly near the entrance, dripping and uncertain. "I'll get towels." Alexander said, already moving toward the linen closet. Sophia giggled when he handed her a fluffy bathrobe that reached past her ankles. 10 minutes later, Maya stood barefoot in his kitchen, wearing one of Alexander's oversized button-down shirts and a pair of dry sweatpants he kept for weekend workouts. She stirred soup on the stove, while Sophia played quietly on the plush carpet nearby. "You didn't have to cook," Alexander said as he walked in, now changed into a soft gray sweater and jeans. "You drove through a storm for us," she replied. "Dinner is the least I can do." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her move like she belonged there. "Smells better than anything my personal chef ever prepared." Maya laughed softly. "Gee, that's because it's made with care instead of obligation." Later, after dinner, the three of them sat on the couch, watching an old animated movie Sophia had chosen. The little girl leaned against Alexander's chest, her hand curled around his sleeve. Halfway through the film, her breathing became slow and even. She was asleep. Alexander looked down at her, then at Maya, who sat beside him with her knees tucked under her. "She's out," he whispered. Maya smiled. She always chooses the movie, then never stays awake to finish it. There was a long pause. The room filled only with soft credits rolling on screen and the storm outside gradually calming. Then Maya spoke. "I'm scared," she said, almost too quietly to hear. Alexander didn't move or respond immediately. "I've learned to live without many things," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "But the hardest part is letting myself imagine more than survival. A real home. A future where Sophia doesn't grow up watching me struggle constantly. A life where someone actually stays." She turned to him, eyes glistening in the soft light, then quickly looked away. "I shouldn't say any of that, Maya," he interrupted gently. She looked up. "Let me carry that hope for you," Alexander said. "For both of you, until you're ready to hold it yourself." Silence, then a breath, a heartbeat. Maya leaned closer, not physically but emotionally. Her shoulders relaxed. The protective wall around her heart cracked just enough. Sophia shifted in her sleep, still holding on to Alexander's arm. He smiled down at her, then met Maya's gaze again. No declarations, no grand promises, just truth and something real growing between them. 1 year later, Maya Rodriguez stood backstage at a packed auditorium wearing a simple blazer and a name badge that read, "Director of Community Outreach, Mitchell and Associates." Not long ago, she had been counting coins for groceries. Now she was leading an initiative for single parents, just like she used to be. In the front row, Sophia, now 5 years old, sat with her curls tied into two bouncy ponytails, waving proudly at her mother. Beside her sat Alexander Chen, still polished in his navy suit, but somehow warmer, more at ease. His attention was focused on the two people who had changed everything about his perspective on success. The press conference began. Alexander stepped to the podium. "Today we're launching more than just a policy," he said. "This is personal. It's called Second Chances. For parents who kept going even when life told them to quit. For those who were overlooked but never gave up." Applause filled the room, but Alexander's eyes stayed on Maya and Sophia, his reasons for everything. Later that afternoon, the three of them walked hand in hand through the park behind the office building. Sophia in the middle, Maya on one side, Alexander on the other. They didn't need to speak of love. They didn't have to. Sophia's tiny fingers swinging between them said everything. A Saturday in the park. Sunlight filtered through tall trees as dozens of children gathered for a free art class. Sophia, wearing a yellow sundress and sparkly sandals, carefully painted watercolors while Alexander knelt beside her, offering encouragement. Artist Sophia is ready for her gallery debut, he teased gently. Maya walked over, laughing, carrying a bag of homemade snacks for the other children. As long as she doesn't try to direct everyone else's artwork again. Sophia looked up toward them. Mama, Papa, look what I made. Maya froze. Papa. It had slipped out so naturally. Alexander didn't flinch or look uncomfortable. He simply reached for Maya's hand. She let him. That evening, Alexander's penthouse kitchen was filled with quiet music and the gentle sounds of cleanup. Maya stood at the sink washing dishes. On the couch, Sophia was fast asleep, curled up in a blanket, holding the same small stuffed elephant she had carried to that job interview over a year ago. Alexander approached and handed Maya a folded document. She dried her hands, opened it, and froze. Partnership agreement, Mitchell and Associates. It wasn't flashy, but it represented real security and genuine trust. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. I did, Alexander said. It's not charity, it's recognition. You didn't just change this company, you changed me. He stepped closer, took her hand. I used to think I had everything I needed, but I didn't have home. Not until you two walked into my life. Maya reached up, touched his cheek gently. Home isn't a place. It's people who stay. Then they kissed. No urgency, no drama, just warmth and the feeling of finally being where they belonged. The wedding was small and intimate. A beach ceremony with close friends, bare feet in warm sand. Maya walked down a petal-scattered path with Sophia skipping ahead, tossing flower petals in every direction. Alexander waited at the end, barefoot in linen, heart in his eyes. The officiant smiled. Do you, Alexander Chen, take this woman and her daughter into your heart? Your life, your forever? Alexander looked at them both. I already have. And do you, Maya Rodriguez, take this man not just for yourself, but as a father to your child and a partner in every challenge to come? Maya's voice cracked with joy. With all my heart. Sophia stood between them, holding both their hands. Together. Back at Mitchell and Associates, a new banner hung above the doors of the Second Chances Community Center. Every parent deserves another opportunity. Every child deserves a future. Down a quiet hallway, the three of them walked hand in hand, sunlight pouring through tall windows. No longer CEO and job applicant. No longer strangers from different worlds. Just a family built on grace and a love that asked for nothing but honesty. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better, because they didn't give up. They found something greater than success. They found home. Sometimes what feels like the end of possibilities is really just the beginning of something beautiful. Maya didn't walk into that interview seeking a miracle. She showed up with courage and dignity and discovered a second chance, a new future, and a family she never saw coming. Because kindness isn't weakness, and love doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. It simply appears and stays